It's time for Krishna book. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivas Adi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai Srila Prabhupada, who has given us this summary study of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And this is volume 2, chapter 23. And the title is The Killing of Dantavakra, Viduratha, Ramaharshan. Now, you have to remember that the Lord appeared 5,000 years ago when Bhumi, personality of the earth planet in the form of a cow, approached Lord Brahma, who is the chief demigod of the creation, the universe, and complained about all the unnecessary military armies and all the fighting that was going on. And Lord Brahma approached Lord Krishna as in his form as Mahavishnu, lying in the causal ocean. And Mahavishnu reassured Lord Brahma that very soon Krishna himself would appear to relieve the earth of these unnecessary military build-up. And so now we're in the 10th canto, in these later chapters. When Krishna appeared, he exhibited childhood pastimes, very sweet and loving, and he was able to kill a few demons to keep them from disturbing the residents of Vrindavan. But now, in his later pastimes, when he's taken on the role of the royal order, Kshatriya, in different ways, these different belligerent personalities who have built up these huge military forces are being eliminated. Because that's the reason Krishna appeared, is to eliminate the unnecessary military forces that were causing disturbances. So now we're going to see the killing of Dantavakra, Viduratha, and Ramaharshan. And for the last several chapters, we've seen a lot of these belligerent personalities destroyed. Of course, being destroyed directly by Krishna is a great benediction because it obtained liberation. But we were hearing about Sishupal, and then those kings that had aligned themselves with Sishupal, and then there was Rukmi, and there's a long list. Salva, a long list of these belligerent kings, which started originally with Kamsa. When Krishna left Vrindavan to take up the duties of the royal order, the first personality that was eliminated was Kamsa, who was one of these belligerent rulers, belligerent ruling class, very belligerent. So, after the demise of Sishupal, Salva, and Pandra, another foolish demoniac king of the name Dantavakra wanted to kill Krishna in order to avenge the death of his friend Salva. This is why Krishna came, was to eliminate these disturbances. He became so agitated that he personally appeared on the battlefield without proper arms and ammunition, and without even a chariot. His only weapon was his great anger, which was red hot. He carried only a club in his hand. But he was so powerful that when he moved, everyone felt the earth tremble. When Lord Krishna saw him approaching in a very heroic mood, he immediately got down from his chariot, for it was a rule of military etiquette that fighting should take place only between equals. Knowing that Dantavakra was alone and armed with only a club, Krishna responded similarly and prepared himself by taking his club in his hand. When Krishna appeared before him, Dantavakra's heroic march was immediately stopped, as the great furious waves of the ocean are stopped by the beach. At that time, Dantavakra, who was the king of Kṛṣṇa, stood up firmly with his club and spoke to Lord Krishna as follows. It is a great pleasure and fortunate opportunity, Krishna, that we're facing each other eye to eye. My dear Krishna, after all, you're my eternal cousin, and I should not kill you in this way. But, unfortunately, you've committed a great mistake by killing my friend Salva. Moreover, you're not satisfied by killing my friend, but I know you want to kill me also. Because of your determination, I must kill you by tearing you to pieces with my club. Krishna, although you're my relative, you are foolish. You are our greatest enemy, so I must kill you today, just as a person removes a boil on his body by a surgical operation. I'm always very much obliged to my friends, and I therefore consider myself indebted to my dear friend Salva. I can only liquidate my indebtedness to him by killing you. As the caretaker of an elephant tries to control the animal by striking it with his trident, so Dantavakra tried to control Krishna simply by speaking strong words. After finishing his vituperation, he struck Krishna on the head with his club and made a roaring sound like a lion. Although struck strongly by the club of Dantavakra, Krishna did not move even an inch, nor did he feel any pain. Taking his Kamadaki club and moving very skillfully, Krishna struck the chest of Dantavakra so fiercely that the heart of Dantavakra split in twain. As a result, Dantavakra began to vomit blood. His hairs became scattered, and he fell to the ground, spreading his hands and legs. Within only a few minutes, all that remained of Dantavakra was a dead body on the ground. After the death of Dantavakra, just at the time of Shishupala's death, in the presence of all persons standing there, a small particle of spiritual effulgence came out of the demon's body and very wonderfully merged into the body of Lord Krishna. Dantavakra had a brother named Viduratha, who became overwhelmed with grief at the death of Dantavakra. Out of grief and anger, Viduratha was breathing very heavily, and just to avenge the death of his brother, he also appeared before Lord Krishna with a sword and a shield in his hands. He wanted to kill Krishna immediately. When Lord Krishna understood that Viduratha was looking for the opportunity to strike with his sword, he employed his Sudarshan chakra, his disc, which was as sharp as a razor, and without delay, he cut off the head of Viduratha with its helmet and earrings. In this way, after killing Shalva and destroying his wonderful airplane, and then killing Dantavakra and Viduratha, Lord Krishna at last entered his city, Dwarka. It would not have been possible for anyone but Krishna to kill these great heroes, and therefore all the demigods from heaven and the human beings on the earth of the globe were glorifying him. Great sages and ascetics, the denizens of the Siddha and Gandharva planets, and the denizens known as Vidyadhars, Vashuki, and Mahaganas, the beautiful angels, the inhabitants of Prithvi Loka, the Yakshas, the Kinnaras, and the Charanas, all began to shower flowers upon him and sing the songs of his victory in great jubilation. Decorating the entire city very festively, the citizens of Dwarka held a great celebration. When Lord Krishna passed through the city, all the members of the Vrishni dynasty and the heroes of the Yadu dynasty followed him with great respect. These are some of the transcendental pastimes of Lord Krishna, who is the master of all mystic power and the Lord of all cosmic manifestations. Those who are fools, who are like animals, sometimes think that Krishna is defeated, but actually he's the supreme personality of Godhead, and no one can defeat him. He always remains victorious over everyone. He is only one God. He is the only one God, and all others are his subservient order carriers. Once upon a time, Lord Balaram heard there was an arrangement being made for a fight between the two royal parties in the Kuru dynasty, one headed by Duryodhana and the other by the Pandavas. He did not like the idea that he was to be only a mediator to stop the fighting. Finding it unbearable not to take an active part on behalf of either of the parties, he left Dwarka on the plea of visiting various holy places of pilgrimage. He first of all visited the place of pilgrimage known as Prabhashetra. He took his bath there, and he pacified the local Brahmins and offered oblations to the demigods, Pitas, great sages, and people in general, in accordance with Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. That is the Vedic method of visiting holy places. After this, accompanied by some respectable Brahmins, he decided to visit different places on the bank of the river Saraswati. He gradually visited such places as Pritudak, Bindusar, Tritakupa, Sudarshana Tirtha, Visala Tirtha, Brahma Tirtha, Chakra Tirtha. Besides these, he also visited all the holy places on the bank of Saraswati River running toward the east. After this, he visited the principal holy places on the bank of the Yamuna and on the bank of the Ganges, and thus he gradually came to the holy place known as Naimisharanya. This holy place, Naimisharanya, is still existing in India, and in ancient times it was especially used for the meetings of great sages and saintly persons with the aim of understanding spiritual life and self-realization. When Lord Balaram visited that place, there was a great sacrifice being performed by a great assembly of transcendentalists. Such meetings were planned to last thousands of years. When Lord Balaram arrived, all the participants of the meeting, great sages, ascetics, Brahmins, learned scholars, immediately arose from their seats and welcomed him with great honor and respect. Some offered him respectful obeisances, and those who were elderly great sages and Brahmins offered him blessings by standing up. After this formality, Lord Balaram was offered a suitable seat, and everyone present worshipped him. Everyone in the assembly stood up in the presence of Balaram because they knew him to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Education or learning means to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, although Lord Balaram appeared on the earth as a Kshatriya, all the Brahmins and sages stood up because they knew who Lord Balaram was. Unfortunately, after being worshipped and seated at his place, Lord Balaram saw Ramaharshan, the disciple of Vyasadeva, who was the literary incarnation of Godhead, still sitting on the Vyasasana. He had neither gotten up from his seat nor offered him respects. Because he was seated on the Vyasasana, he foolishly thought himself greater than the Lord. Therefore, he did not get down from his seat or bow down before the Lord. Lord Balaram then considered the history of Ramaharshan. He was born in a Sutta family, or a mixed family, born of a Brahmin woman and a Kshatriya man. Therefore, although Romaharshan considered Balaram a Kshatriya, he should not have remained sitting on a higher seat. Lord Balaram considered that Romaharshan, according to his position by birth, should not have accepted the higher sitting position, because there were many learned Brahmins and sages present. He also observed that Romaharshan not only did not come down from his exalted seat, but he did not even stand up and offer his respects when Balaramaji entered the assembly. Lord Balaram did not like the audacity of Ramaharshan and became very angry with him. When a person is seated on the Vyasasana, he does not generally have to stand up to receive a particular person entering the assembly. But in this case, the situation was different because Lord Balaram is not an ordinary human being. Therefore, although Romaharshan's sutta was voted to the Vyasasana by all the Brahmins, he should have followed the behavior of other learned sages and Brahmins who were present and should have known that Lord Balarama is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Respects are always due him, even though such respects can be avoided in the case of an ordinary man. The appearances of Krishna and Balarama are especially meant for re-establishment of religious principles. As stated in the Bhagavad-gītā, the highest religious principle is to surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is also confirmed in the Srimad Bhagavatam that the topmost perfection of religiousness is to be engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. When Lord Balarama saw that Romaharshan Sutta did not understand the highest principle of religiousness, in spite of having studied all the Vedas, he certainly could not support his position. Romaharshan Sutta had been given a chance to become a perfect Brahmin, but because of his ill behavior in his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his low birth was immediately remembered. Romaharshan Sutta had been given the position of a Brahmin, but he had not been born in the family of a Brahmin. He'd been born in a Pratiloma family. According to the Vedic concept, there are two kinds of mixed family heritage. They're called Anuloma and Pratiloma. When a male is united with a female of a lower caste, the offspring is called Anuloma. But when a male unites with a woman of a higher caste, the offspring is called Pratiloma. Romaharshan Sutta belonged to the Pratiloma family. His father was a Kshatriya and his mother a Brahmin. Because Romaharshan's transcendental realization was not perfect, Lord Balarama remembered his Pratiloma heritage. The idea is that any man can be given the chance to become a Brahmin, but if he improperly uses the position of a Brahmin without actual realization, then his elevation to Brahminical position is not valid. After seeing the deficiency of realization in Romaharshan Sutta, Lord Balarama decided to chastise him for being puffed up. Lord Balarama therefore said, "This man is liable to be awarded the death punishment because, although he has the good qualification of being a disciple of Lord Vyasadeva, and although he has studied all the Vedic literature from this exalted personality, he's not submissive in the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead." As stated in the Bhagavad-gītā, a person who is actually a Brahmin and is very learned must automatically become very gentle also. In the case of Romaharshan Sutta, although he was very learned and had been given the chance to become a Brahmin, he had not become gentle. For this we can understand that when one is puffed up by material acquisition, he cannot acquire the gentle behavior befitting a Brahmin. The learning of such a person is as good as a valuable jewel decorating the hood of a serpent. Despite the valuable jewel on the hood, a serpent is still a serpent, and is as fearful as an ordinary serpent. If a person does not become meek and humble, all his studies of the Vedas and Puranas and vast knowledge in the Shastras become simply outward dress, like the costume of a theatrical artist dancing on the stage. Lord Balarama began to consider thus, "I have appeared in order to chastise false persons who are internally impure but externally pose themselves to be very learned and religious. My killing of such persons is proper to check them from further sinful activity." Lord Balarama had avoided taking part in the battle of Kurukshetra, and yet because of his position, the establishment of religious principles was his prime duty. Considering these points, he killed Romaharshan Sutta simply by striking him with a kusha straw, which was nothing but a blade of grass. If someone questions how Lord Balarama could kill Romaharshan Sutta simply by striking him with a blade of kusha grass, the answer is given in Srimad Bhagavatam by the use of the word Prabhu, or master. The Lord's position is always transcendental, and because he is omnipotent, he can act as he likes without being obliged to the material laws and principles. Thus it was possible for him to kill Romaharshan Sutta simply by striking him with a blade of kusha grass. After the death of Romaharshan Sutta, Everyone present became much aggrieved, and there was roaring and crying. Although all the Brahmins and sages present there knew Lord Balarama to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they did not hesitate to protest the Lord's action. And they humbly submitted. Our dear Lord, we think that your action is not in line with the religious principles. Dear Lord Yadunandana, we may inform you that we Brahmins posted Romaharshan Sutta on that exalted position for the duration of this great sacrifice. He was seated on the Vyasasan by our election, and when one is seated on the Vyasasan, it is improper for him to stand up to receive a person. Moreover, we awarded Romaharshan Sutta an undisturbed duration of life. Under the circumstances, since your lordship has killed him without knowing all these facts, we think that your action has been equal to that of killing a Brahmin. Dear Lord, deliver our fallen souls. We know certainly that you are the knower of all Vedic principles. You are the master of all mystic powers. Therefore, ordinarily, the Vedic injunctions cannot be applied to your personality. But we request that you show your causeless mercy upon others by kindly atoning for this killing of Romaharshan Sutta. We do not, however, suggest what kind of act you should perform to atone for killing him. We simply suggest that some method of atonement be adopted by you, so that others may follow your action. What is done by a great personality is followed by ordinary men. The Lord replied, Yes, I must atone for this action, which may have been proper for me, but is improper for others. Therefore, I think it is my duty to execute a suitable act of atonement enjoined in the authorized scriptures. Simultaneously, I can also give this Romaharshan Sutta life again with a span of long duration, sufficient strength, and full power of the senses. Not only this, if you desire, I shall be glad to award him anything else which you may ask. I shall be very glad to grant all these boons in order to fulfill your desires. This statement of Lord Balarama definitely confirms that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is free to act in any way. Although it may be considered that his killing of Romaharshan Sutta was improper, he could immediately counteract the action with greater profit to all. Therefore, one should not imitate the actions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One should simply follow the instructions of the Lord. All the great learned sages present realized that, although they considered the action of Lord Balarama to be improper, the Lord was able to immediately compensate with great profits. Not wanting to detract from the mission of the Lord in killing Romaharshan Sutta, all of them prayed, Our dear Lord, the uncommon use of your Kusha weapon to kill Romaharshan Sutta may remain as it is because of your desire to kill him. He should not be brought back to life again. At the same time, your lordship may remember that we sages and Brahmins voluntarily gave him long life. Therefore, such a benediction should not be nullified. Thus, the request of all the learned Brahmins in the assembly was ambiguous, because they wanted to keep intact the benediction given by them that Romaharshan Sutta would continue to live until the end of the sacrifice, but at the same time, they did not want to nullify Balarama's killing him. The Supreme Personality of Godhead therefore solved the problem in a manner befitting his exalted position, and said, Because the Son is produced from the body of the Father, it is the injunction of the Vedas that the Son is the Father's representative. Therefore I say that Ugrasrava Sutta, the son of Romaharshan Sutta, should henceforth take his father's position and continue the discourses on the Puranas. And because you wanted Romaharshan Sutta to have a long duration of life, this benediction will be transferred to his son. The son, Ugrasrava, will therefore have all the facilities you offered, long duration of life in a good and healthy body, without any disturbances, and full strength of the senses. Lord Balarama then implored all the sages and Brahmins that, aside from the benediction offered to the son of Ramaharshan, they should ask from him any other benediction, and he would be prepared to fulfill it immediately. The Lord thus placed himself in the position of an ordinary Kshatriya, and informed the sages that he did not know in what way he could atone for his killing Ramaharshan Sutta, but whatever they would suggest, he would be glad to accept. The Brahmins could understand the purpose of the Lord, and thus they suggested that he atone for his action in a manner which would be beneficial for them. They said, "Our dear Lord, there's a demon named Balvala. He's the son of Ilvala. He's a very powerful demon, and he visits this sacred place of sacrifice every fortnight on the full moon and moonless days, and creates a great disturbance to the discharge of our duties in the sacrifice. O descendant of the Darsar family, we request you to kill this demon. We think that if you kindly kill him, that will be your atonement on our behalf. The demon occasionally comes here and profusely throws upon us contaminated, impure things like pus, blood, stool, urine, wine, and he pollutes the sacred place by showering such filth upon us. After killing Balvala, you may continue touring all these sacred places of pilgrimage for 12 months, and in that way you'll be completely freed from all contamination. That is our prescription." Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the second volume, 23rd chapter of Krishna, the killing of Dantavakra, Viduratha, and Romaharshan.